3 weeks ago, I arrived at Boston's South Station, holding a train ticket in hand. A ticket for a trip meant to celebrate my father Thomas's 60th birthday and to bring our family back together. But the ticket clerk looked at me and said, "This ticket was already used this morning by someone named Tiffany, my younger sister." I stood still, watching the train pull away. I knew they had planned this, without me. They got on the very train I had prepared for nearly a month. They sat in the very seats I had picked. And they left me behind, even though I had paid for it all. In that moment, I no longer felt like I was part of the family. They thought I'd just let it go, like all the other times they hurt me before, but they were wrong. Before I dive into what happened next, I'd really love to know where you're watching my channel from today. If you've ever been hurt by family, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear the rest of my plan for how I'm dealing with this betrayal in my family. My name is Gloria Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, and I grew up in a 3-bedroom house in the southern suburbs of Boston, where I could hear birds in the morning and the smell of roasted coffee would drift through the door crack each day. But my real home, the place I was truly raised, was a small farm in Vermont, filled with the scent of hay, the roar of tractors, and my father's sunburned hands always stained with oil. My mother, Carol, was a woman of the seasons, of budgeting notebooks, and scoldings that somehow never reached my younger sister. Tiffany was born when I had just turned 4. Back then, I was excited, thinking I'd have a playmate, someone to share the wooden toys my grandfather had crafted. But over time, I began to realize every gaze in the house turned in one direction. From my grandparents, to the neighbors, to our own parents, everyone melted at Tiffany's smile. I didn't hate her, but I learned early that in this house, to be loved, you had to be adorable and just troublesome enough to be forgiven. I was the one who fixed the water valve Tiffany forgot to shut off after school, the one who picked up every single screw she dropped in the chicken coop, the one who skipped a math quiz to run home and fix the bicycle she'd bent against the fence. Meanwhile, the one and only time she got a B in her life, my father rewarded her with a brand new MacBook, the exact model just released that year. And me? I was the girl with straight A's, who only got a "don't brag too much, Tiffany might feel bad." Back then, I thought, maybe if I just tried harder, they'd finally see me. I enrolled at the University of North Carolina, studying nursing, because my mother said it was stable, useful, but after just 1 year, I knew I didn't belong. I was overwhelmed by the pressure, the pace, and a deep sense of disconnection from the work. During a startup seminar in my sophomore year, I met Kyle, a young speaker talking about e-commerce and following your passion. For some reason, that day I stayed until the very end, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to fit into someone else's mold. I just had to fit into my own. I dropped out and started learning how to sell products online. My parents were disappointed. My dad stayed silent. My mom sighed. Giving up a job with a pension for some silly thing on the internet? Have you lost your mind? Those days were hard. I worked 2 jobs, waiting tables during the day, staying up until 2 a.m., researching suppliers from China, Vietnam, Indonesia. I loved coffee, not the watery street kind, but the bold, pure, earthy kind, like one I had tasted once while traveling in Vietnam. 3 months later, I received my first order, just 12 packets of coffee. But I couldn't sleep that night. Not from stress, but joy. Because someone out there believed in me. For the next 3 years, I didn't take a single day off. Then came a $3 million contract from the New England hospital chain. They ordered my coffee products, with a commitment to supply every small cafe across their hospital system. I called my parents to share the news. I thought, maybe finally they'd be proud of me. My mom simply said, "That's good, but don't talk about it too much, or your sister might feel pressured," and immediately switched the conversation to how Tiffany just got a new job as a receptionist at a 5-star hotel and how much the manager adored her. And just 3 days later, my mom called again. "Gloria, the washing machine at home broke. Your dad's back is hurting. He can't fix it. The electric bill this month went up too." She didn't ask directly, but I knew she wanted me to cover it. I just nodded and opened my banking app. And then, like clockwork, every time a bill needed to be paid, they would call me. Not to check in, not because they missed me, but like calling a bank. I was the oldest child, so apparently that made it my obvious duty. But over time, I started to feel tired. Not because of the money, but because I didn't know when it would ever be enough to be seen as their daughter, instead of just their solution. I don't remember exactly when I started feeling like just a walking wallet. Maybe it was after the 10th call from my mother asking about the water bill, or maybe it was when Tiffany moved in for 3 months and never once chipped in for groceries. But the clearest moment was the day my father called, his voice dry and without hesitation. "The bank just called about the late mortgage payment for this month. You've really embarrassed me." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. It was the first time he used the word embarrassed about me. Not when I quit nursing school, not when I started my coffee business, but for forgetting a payment that should never have been my responsibility. I quickly said, "I'm sorry. I'll pay it right now." He paused for a few seconds. Then his voice softened. "Your mother and I will pay you back in full, once my health gets better and she finds a new job." I nodded robotically, not daring to say that in the past 2 years, I had never once asked for a penny back from all I'd spent on that house. I sat silently in the kitchen, watching the afternoon sunlight slip through the white curtains. Maybe losing stable income had made my father more irritable, especially after the accident with the fertilizer sprayer on the farm. Since then, his health had clearly declined: back pain, trembling hands, and a mood that turned more bitter by the day. My mother no longer worked, staying home to care for him and cook. I began to think, maybe my family needed something positive, a change, a moment of peace amidst these heavy, dragging days. And then the idea came to me: organize a 60th birthday trip for my father, not in that worn-out town or pressure-filled home, but somewhere unfamiliar, beautiful enough to make someone pause. I wasn't hoping for a miracle, but maybe, just maybe, it would lift his spirits and bring our family back together, even just a little. I chose Detroit, where autumn gently touches the maple forests, painting them like a canvas. We had visited there once, 20 years ago. A vague memory of a night sharing warm apple pie in an old wooden cabin, my father telling stories of my grandfather. I planned it like the biggest event of my life. I booked premium scenic train tickets with private glass dome compartments. The hotel was an old lakeside resort near Lake Erie, with a wood-burning fireplace and a piano just like the one in a family photo I found in an old album. I picked dinner at Old Oak Tavern, the place my father once called home to the best braised beef I've ever had. I even upgraded my parents' room to one with its own fireplace and a mountain view, because I wanted them to feel cherished, valued. The total cost came to nearly $15,000. I paid it all. Not with my business, with my personal account. And me? I booked a smaller, cheaper room, 5 minutes away on foot. I thought, as long as they're happy, it'll be worth it. I asked Tiffany a few times if she could join. Each time she replied vaguely, "I just started this job 2 months ago. I might not be able to take time off." I didn't push. I respected that. I didn't want this trip to prove anything, just to create a space where we could laugh again, where I wasn't the only one trying to hold on. 1 week before the trip, I poured all my energy into arranging everything for my staff. I handed off major orders to the operations assistant, drafted contingency plans in case Amazon deliveries got delayed by weather, even wrote preemptive responses for VIP clients, as if I were going on vacation for a month, not just 3 days. I didn't include Tiffany in any part of the plan, not because I forgot, but because I'd asked her 3 times and every time her reply was like a broken record. "I just started this job 2 months ago. I might not be able to take time off." I understood. Maybe her schedule really was tight. I didn't want to add pressure. All I hoped for was a peaceful trip that might lighten my parents' hearts and let me see them smile again. I wasn't expecting a grand change. I wasn't trying to prove how capable I was. I just wanted to create a memory that was real, not tied to bills or obligations. A real family moment. No sulking, no money requests, no one feeling like the odd one out. A week before departure, my mother sent me a brief message. Tiffany still can't join. I read that text while standing in a store, picking out cinnamon butter cookies, my father's favorite with afternoon tea. I smiled faintly. Maybe everything was still going as planned. The fewer people, the quieter the trip. 3 days later, everything was finalized. Train tickets, hotel bookings, restaurant confirmations. I bought 3 paper train tickets for my father, mother, and myself, and mailed them to our Vermont home. Full-color printouts, with QR codes to be scanned at the train car doors. That night, I called my mother. "Did the envelope arrive tonight?" The train company said it was delivered by hand. No one picked up. I texted, "Mom, I sent 3 train tickets home already. Please, put them in your wallet for Dad and yourself. They're really pretty." A day passed. No reply. No return call. Just silence. I tried to think positively. Maybe she was busy, or left her phone in the kitchen. Maybe it was nothing serious. Until I opened Instagram while sipping evening tea and saw a story from Tiffany. A new suitcase, blush pink, neat and gleaming, placed beside spotless white sneakers. Caption: "Getting ready for a very special trip." I blinked. I looked again. No specific information, no tagged location. Just familiar imagery, a brand new suitcase, and Tiffany, who never splurged on luggage unless it was for something important. A strange feeling crept into my chest. An unnameable anxiety, like walking into a familiar room only to find something ever so slightly out of place. I didn't message Tiffany. I just sat quietly in my little apartment, with a cup of tea growing cold and a heart growing colder still. I kept telling myself it was just a misunderstanding, that maybe Tiffany was traveling for work, that the suitcase had nothing to do with me, that Mom had simply forgotten to check her messages, that there was still hope. That morning, the day the trip was supposed to begin, I woke up earlier than usual, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and wore my charcoal gray wool coat, the one I had bought for myself after signing my first big contract. I didn't rush. I wanted this trip to begin with calm, not fanfare, just the right people in the right place. At Boston South Station, I handed my online booking code to the ticket clerk, hoping to exchange it for a digital pass for my Apple Wallet. The middle-aged woman behind the counter glanced at her screen, frowning slightly. "This code has already been scanned this morning at the Vermont transfer station." I didn't understand. "Sorry, what did you say?" She turned the screen toward me. The words were clear. "Used. 7:04 a.m. Green Mountain Station. Car 3. Seat 14. A." I stood there, not because the information shocked me, but because deep down I had already known, and was just trying not to believe it. I didn't call. I didn't look up more details. I just walked out of the waiting area, past other travelers getting ready for weekend getaways, backpacks slung over their shoulders, smiles bright. The loudspeaker rang out. "Train 456 to Stockbridge and North Adams will depart in 5 minutes. Passengers, please prepare to board." I stepped closer to the tracks, standing behind the yellow line. The train pulled out slowly, like in an old film. I saw the glass cars reflecting the early morning light as they glided past. Cold, sleek, silent. And in that moment, I realized I had been replaced. Quietly, cleanly, without a word. The seat I paid for, with money from my own pocket, no longer waited for me. The one boarding that train wasn't me, and the one left behind was only me. I stood there, like a ticketless spectator, in the very play I had written. I drifted out of the station, my feet barely touching the ground. The feeling was no longer sadness, but a kind of emptiness, as if I'd never existed in their plans, as if everything I'd arranged, the tickets, the rooms, the restaurant, was just a personal daydream, carried alone. I stepped into a small coffee shop on the corner near the station, where the air still held the warmth of fresh pastries and wind chimes jingled above the door, a sound that made me feel real again. I sat by the large window, ordered a latte, but didn't drink it. I looked outside, where people rushed toward buses, setting off on their weekend getaways, children laughing, someone waving goodbye to someone else. Life went on, just not with me in it. 2 hours later, I unlocked my phone, scrolling social media out of painful habit, and then I saw it. A new post from Tiffany. The photo was unmistakable, taken in front of the very hotel I had booked, the calm lake behind them, the small wooden bridge stretching across it, and the dark brass patio furniture I had selected under priority view. In the picture, my father, mother, and Tiffany, sipping morning tea, smiling as if for a tourism ad. Below the photo, a short caption with a sun emoji and coffee cup, "Family Vacation." I sat still, unblinking. My hands trembled, not from cold, but because something inside me had just shattered. I wasn't in the photo. I wasn't in the words. There was no space for me. In the family they were now enjoying. I hadn't missed the trip. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been replaced, entirely. I stared at that post for a long time, as if I looked long enough, the truth would twist into a lie, and I would wake up in some alternate reality. But no illusion came, only a deep ache spreading down my spine, as if someone had quietly removed the last pin holding my trust together. I couldn't go home. I couldn't walk back into that familiar apartment, lie down, and pretend this hadn't happened. I didn't want to sit with this pain alone, like I always had. I drove straight to Lisa's house, my best friend from college, the only person who had seen me sob, breathless, in the dorm bathroom after failing my nursing internship, and the same one who pushed me into attending my first startup seminar. The door opened after 3 knocks. Lisa was still in her pajamas. She didn't ask anything. She just looked at me for a second, then opened her arms. I held on to her like a drowning person clutching a lifeline. We sat on the couch. I told her everything, from planning the trip, booking the tickets, sending them, then standing in silence at the station while the train pulled away without me. I spoke slowly, in pieces, like unraveling a thread tangled for years. Lisa listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked only one question. "Have they ever asked you? Are you okay?" I said nothing. Lisa poured me a glass of water, placed it in my hand, and said, "Gloria, they don't see you as family. They see you as a financial tool." I laughed, but it caught in my throat. I knew she was right. I had known it for a long time. But no one had ever said it aloud before, and I had never dared say it to myself. I took out my phone, called my father. No answer. I called my mother. Her phone was off. I opened social media again, and saw a new post, a second photo that day. This time, all 3 of them, Dad, Mom, and Tiffany, standing in the middle of a forest of red leaves, sunlight filtering through golden branches like liquid gold. Below the image was a caption from my mother. "Nothing better than time with the ones you love." I set the phone down, resting my head in my palms. No message asking, "Where are you?" No apology. No explanation. The trip continued. My family continued. Only now, without me in it. I returned to my apartment as the sky began to dim. October in Boston, and the wind had started to carry that early winter chill. Not sharp, but deep, especially after a day where you realize there's no place left for you in your own life. I opened the door. The lights were still off. My coat still hung where I'd left it that morning. Everything was in place, except I was no longer sure of my own place. I sat down, picked up my phone instinctively, and saw it. Another post from my mother. It had gone up while I was still at Lisa's, trying not to cry aloud. The image was familiar. My family walking beside Lake Stockbridge, a spot I had spent 3 nights choosing, because I knew Dad loved lake air, Mom loved wildflowers, and Tiffany loved selfies. They stood bathed in sunlight, smiling wide. I wasn't in the picture, but what truly froze me was the caption, "Grateful to Tiffany for making time from her busy job to be with family on this special occasion." I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand, but because I couldn't believe it. Tiffany, the one I had asked 3 times about the trip, only to hear, "I'm not sure I can get the time off," was now praised as the one who made sacrifices for the family. And me, the one who planned everything, paid for everything, wrote each email confirmation, chose every meal on the menu, wasn't mentioned. Not a line. Not a word. Not a comma. I set the phone down as if it were on fire. But before I could steady my breath, it lit up again. My father sent a photo. I opened the message. A dinner table. The restaurant I had booked, the appetizers I selected, the wine he liked. The 3 of them, Dad, Mom, and Tiffany, raising their glasses, seated in the exact spot I had requested, by the very window I'd chosen. Tiffany sat in the seat I had imagined for myself. Attached was a simple message. "Such a shame you were too busy to be here with us." I put the phone down, leaned back into the chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. No tears, no shouting, just a sharp, icy pain cutting through every muscle. When you realize you weren't just excluded, you were rewritten as the one who chose to walk away. I hadn't been absent because I was busy. I had been replaced. And then they acted as if I was never meant to be there in the first place. I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't sit still. The next morning, I drove to Vermont, to the house I had been paying the mortgage for over the past 2 years, even though the title was still under my parents' names. I had never asked for reimbursement, thinking of it as my way to give back, part of the responsibility of being the eldest. The car rolled through familiar roads, autumn gold covering the hills, but I felt no warmth, just a need to confirm, with my own eyes, the quiet boundary they had crossed. At the house, the gate was unlocked. On the porch, the chair I repainted last year still sat, alongside a beige hoodie, Tiffany's, with the cafe logo from my company, which I had never given her. Inside, a half-finished smoothie on the table, caramel syrup on the shelf, details that screamed her presence. I walked through the house like an uninvited guest in a space I'd been funding. No one said thank you. No one asked. But Tiffany was here now, the one with rights. Standing in front of the fridge, still running on my last electricity payment, I felt something new. Not guilt, not sorrow, clarity. I left without looking back. At home, I canceled every automatic payment, mortgage, utilities, trash. Then I wrote an email, CC'd my lawyer. Starting this month, I will no longer cover any expenses related to the Vermont property. The total paid is $47,300. You have 60 days to settle before legal counsel proceeds. From today, all financial support ends. I didn't add feelings. No explanation. No open door. Because I finally understood, sometimes love isn't about continuing to give. It's about knowing when to stop, so you don't keep bleeding. 3 days later, a call came from the local bank. The mortgage has been canceled. Without payment in 3 days, foreclosure begins. I stayed calm. I'm no longer responsible. Please contact the legal owner or my attorney. 10 minutes later, my mother called. "Gloria, what the hell are you doing? We'll end up on the street." Her voice sharp, unfiltered. I paused, then said, "Are you calling your bank or your daughter?" Silence. "I've paid for 2 years. No thank you. Not once did you ask if I was okay. I'm not your wallet, and I'm not your daughter to be used anymore." I made it clear. "My lawyer will handle it. I'm not coming back." She softened, faking gentleness. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Tiffany needed that trip to recover. I just tried to keep peace." I cut her off. You didn't keep peace. You chose. And you chose a family photo without me in it. Silence. Then, a soft voice. You make it sound like everything I did was wrong. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the most honest answer. That evening my father called. I hadn't planned to answer, but I did. His voice low, worn. Why did your mom tell me you had work and couldn't come? If I'd known? Then he asked, off script. Carol, why did you say that? I heard my mother on the line. Long pause. Then she exhaled. Because Tiffany got fired. She cried. She begged to go. I didn't think Gloria would notice. Silence. Cold. I hung up. No tears. Just truth. The mortgage used to be a gift. Now it was a line in the sand, not out of hate, but to survive. I started therapy on a Monday morning, not because I was breaking, but because I no longer wanted to just survive. I wanted to protect myself. The office was in a red brick building near Beacon Hill. My therapist, Eleanor, was in her 50s, gray hair tied loosely, eyes like warm tea. She said, "Start wherever you want." I started at the train station. Then the rest followed. Tiffany's post, Dad's dinner photo, the house payments, everything I had carried until I stopped. Eleanor listened quietly, then said one thing. You're not doing this to punish. You're doing this to survive. Boundaries don't destroy families. They stop the hurt. I didn't speak, just nodded. Something inside me loosened. 2 days later, their vacation ended. My phone rang nonstop. 10 calls from Mom, 5 from Tiffany, 3 from Dad. I didn't answer. I always had, during meetings while sick, but not now. 2 voicemails came. First, my mother. So this is how you repay us for raising you? I stopped listening. Second, Tiffany. You think money lets you do whatever you want? You always had to be better, even in your own family. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Silence is also a boundary. And this time, I chose not to react. That night, while reviewing product specs, my phone rang again. Dad. I hesitated, but picked up, his voice low, no anger. I'm sorry, I believed your mom when she said you had to work. I didn't ask. That was my mistake. I stayed quiet. He went on. And I'm sorry for being silent these past 30 years, for letting your mother treat you like you always had to carry the weight. I was wrong. From now on, I'll respect your decisions. I didn't say a word, just listened. Then he hung up. I set the phone down and cried. Not from blame, but because, for the first time in my life, my father apologized. It was late, but it wasn't meaningless. Even so, it didn't change my plan. I would continue therapy, continue cutting financial ties, continue keeping my distance, because now I knew, love, if it's going to last, must come with boundaries. The first changes came not through apologies, but through actions. 2 months later, I received an email from the bank. My parents had begun the process of selling the farm, the 20-acre land where I used to run between corn rows in the summer, where my hands once smelled of mud and cow manure, was reappraised. And they chose to sell it. They also listed the house in Vermont, the one I had quietly been paying the mortgage for over 2 years. My mother called, and for the first time, she didn't ask for anything. She just said simply, "We're moving into a smaller apartment, near the clinic, just big enough for the 2 of us." No blame, no bragging, no requests. Tiffany, too. She rented a small apartment near her new job, out in the eastern suburbs of Montpellier. Still unstable, but this time it felt different. No more cryptic self-care posts, no more texts saying, "I'm stressed. Can you call me?" Just brief stories, screenshots of her shift schedule, photos of a freshly wiped espresso machine behind the bar. For the first time, Tiffany seemed to actually be trying, for herself, not for forgiveness, not to reclaim love, just to work. I didn't congratulate her, didn't praise, but I felt lighter. Like the rope that had tied me to the belief that I had to carry the family was finally loosening. Everyone was starting to stand on their own. As for me, I kept working. Steadily. But something changed. I no longer needed to prove anything. No more effort to send profit reports home. No need for recognition to feel worthy. My company continued to grow, perhaps even better than before. A cafe chain in Colorado just signed a 3-year distribution deal. This quarter's profit doubled from last year's. But this time, I didn't call to brag. I just bought a good bottle of wine, played some soft jazz, and sat alone in my office, quietly thanking myself. A few weeks later, I moved into a new apartment, bigger, brighter, with a small backyard where the morning sun was just soft enough to brew a hand-poured espresso, not the automated press I used to rely on when I was busy, but the slow kind, the kind where you wait for the water to boil, pour in circles, and let the aroma gently rise. I planted some lavender bushes along the wooden fence, the same kind I remembered from the farm as a child. Each evening, I watered them with a small glass bottle, a task that took time, but brought a strange peace. No more calls about utility bills. No more, "Don't talk too much. Tiffany might feel bad." No more sighs, hints, or avoidance. Just my voice and the quiet I once thought I'd never find. 6 months passed since the last time I spoke to my family, not out of anger, but because I needed space to learn how to live without bracing myself for someone else's needs. One May afternoon, while checking my planting journal out on the balcony, my phone buzzed. A message from Tiffany. Not long, not dramatic. Just a few lines, but enough to make me read more slowly than usual. "When I left Mom and Dad's shadow, I learned money doesn't grow on trees, and no one's waiting at the finish line for you anymore. I was wrong, and I know I'm part of why the family broke. I'm not asking to be forgiven. I just want you to know. I get it now." I set the phone down, letting the sunlight filter through the lavender leaves. And then, a few days later, another message. This time, from Mom. No trace of the usual tone from the woman who once suggested I help out a little by paying the mortgage. Just a raw honesty that surprised me. After starting therapy, I realized how much my favoritism toward Tiffany hurt you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to show it through actions, not words. I read it again, then typed a brief reply. Start small. Meet me at the Ashbury Street Cafe. 3 days from now. Bring no expectations. Just bring the truth. 3 days later, she came. No makeup, no long dress, just a slightly wrinkled blouse and a cautious gaze. We didn't talk much. I asked about her new work at the nearby farm. She spoke about pulling weeds, trimming plants, and learning to use a simple inventory software. We said goodbye with a nod. No hugs. No tears. But, for the first time, I didn't feel angry. A few weeks later, I invited Tiffany for dinner at my apartment. She arrived on time, carrying a loaf of cinnamon toast and a box of pistachio ice cream. Both things I used to love as a kid. We ate, talked about work, about our favorite podcasts, about how she's now saving money every month without being reminded. That Christmas, for the first time in years, I returned to my parents' home. No extravagant gifts, no big celebration. Just a warm meal with roast chicken, red wine, and a small table, enough for 4 people. This time, no one was replaced. That night, back home, I sat alone on my porch. The sky was full of stars. December air cool enough to want one more cup of hot coffee. I looked up, and for the first time, I didn't feel small for what I had lost. I realized setting boundaries doesn't break families. It teaches each person how to love better. So I no longer have to strain just to be loved, so they can't love without thinking about someone else's pain. And so, finally, all of us can be ourselves, without needing to sacrifice anyone. Thank you for staying with me through this story. Please like and subscribe before watching the next family betrayal story on the channel.